My name is Emily Carter. I am 32 years old, and I have spent more than a decade learning what it feels like to be erased by the people who were supposed to love me most. Every holiday passed with the same silence, every family photo posted without my face, every Thanksgiving chair filled by someone else while mine stayed empty. This year was no different. The invitation went out, but not to me. At first, I thought it was just another wound I would have to carry alone, but something changed. Because when you have been pushed aside long enough, there comes a moment when you stop begging for a seat at the table and start building your own. That is what I did. With the man who saw my worth when my family refused to, I found the strength to do more than walk away. I found the courage to show them the truth they thought they had buried. And let me tell you, when that truth flickered across their perfect Thanksgiving table, not a single person at that room could breathe. Do you want to know how it all happened? Stay with me because this story is one you will not forget. Let me take you back to where it began. I wasn't invited. Not this year. Not last year. Not for the past 12. The email came on a Tuesday afternoon while I was finishing a report at the office in Los Angeles. Subject line bright and cheerful, the kind that almost felt desperate to sound warm. Carter Family Thanksgiving 2025. RSVP by Friday. My stomach tightened before I even clicked because I already knew. I opened it anyway. Everyone was there. Camille, of course, with her husband and the 2 boys. Aunt Janine from Savannah with her sweet potato casserole. Uncle Bob probably still wearing that fishing cap he thinks is lucky. Even Cousin Lily, who once stole my prom dress and lied with a straight face. Their names lined up like ornaments on a tree, but not mine. No Emily, no typo, just air where I should have been. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. That kind of exclusion doesn't scream, it hums. A low, steady sound like a refrigerator running in the background until one day the silence becomes all you hear. I tried to push the laptop close, but my hand froze halfway. It wasn't shock. It was the confirmation of something I had lived with for over a decade. Behind me, the glass windows of my office showed the city stretched out hazy. With afternoon Sunday, I had fought hard for this corner view, for the framed degrees on the wall, for the financial stability that meant I never had to ask anyone for help. And yet the room felt colder than the Pacific fog that sometimes rolled through. I must have gone still too long because James tapped on my doorframe. He leaned in, tie-loosened hair pushed back from a long day. His voice was steady, the kind that grounded me every time. "You look like you saw a ghost." I turned the laptop toward him. He walked closer, scanned the email, then looked at me with that mixture of pity and frustration he never quite managed to hide when it came to my family. "Again, 12 years," I whispered. 12 years. And they still make it sound like a family tradition I don't belong to. He pulled out the chair across from me and sat down. "Emily, at some point you have to stop chasing their approval. They have made their choice." "It is not about approval," I said, sharper than I meant to. "It is about not being erased." He studied me for a long moment, then reached for my hand. His palm was warm against mine, anchoring me. "I know it hurts, but maybe it is time to stop waiting for an invitation that will never come." Before I could answer, my phone buzzed against the desk. Aunt Janine's name flashed on the screen. I hesitated, then picked up. "Emily, honey," her voice always carried that soft drawl from Savannah. "I just wanted to make sure you saw the email. We are all meeting in Charlotte this year. Camille is hosting. You know how she is with decorations. It will be beautiful." My throat tightened. I forced myself to ask, "Did Mom ask you to call?" No, Janine said quickly. "Just me. I like to check in. Everyone is so excited. Everyone." I heard the word too clearly. I pressed my eyes shut. "That sounds nice," I said, keeping my voice even. "I hope you all enjoy it." There was a pause, like she realized what she had just confirmed. Then a quick, nervous laugh. "Anyway, I will see you around, darling." When the line went dead, I sat in silence. James squeezed my hand once, but he did not say anything. He knew there was nothing to say. I leaned back in my chair, the hum of the city faint below. My family had chosen their circle and drawn it tighter every year. I was not in it. And yet, even as the familiar ache settled in my chest, a different thought began to stir, quiet but steady. If they would not see me, maybe it was time I showed them in a way they could not ignore. The cursor blinked on the empty screen of my laptop. Outside the window, the last light of day fell over Los Angeles. Warm and golden, but my office still felt cold. I sat very still, listening to the silence grow heavier, until I finally closed the laptop, and slipped the phone into my bag. When I turned, James was still watching me. His eyes held the question he did not need to speak. I nodded once, and that was enough. That night, as we drove home, city lights flickering past the windshield, I realized the email had not ended anything. It had started something. I woke up the next morning, with the email still replaying in my head like a song I could not turn off. The ceiling of our apartment in Los Angeles looked the same. The sun slid in through the blinds in soft strips of light, but I felt heavier, as if I had been carrying something through my dreams. James had already left early for a call with his team in New York, his side of the bed neat, except for the faint scent of his cologne on the pillow. I lay there for a moment before the memories began to pull me back to places I had tried so hard to leave behind. It started the winter my father had his stroke. I was 20, still in grad school, when the call came. I booked the first flight I could and sat beside him for 2 weeks straight. I held his hand while machines beeped around us, read Steinbeck aloud because his eyes flickered open when he heard familiar words, spoon-fed him soup when the nurses were too rushed. My sister Camille came once, stayed for an hour, said she could not handle seeing him like that. Mom said she was overwhelmed with her boys and her job, but she still found time to post photos of wine nights with friends. I never said anything then. I just told myself family shows up in different ways. But when Dad whispered my name, through the slur of recovery, his eyes wet, I knew who had truly been there. Still, when Thanksgiving rolled around that year, Mom gave Camille the seat of honor at the table, bragged about her resilience, while I sat at the far end next to the neighbor's kid who had wandered in. I remember another time 3 years later. I flew overnight from Los Angeles, still in my work clothes, hoping to surprise them. My body ached from the red-eye, but I smiled as I carried the pumpkin pie I had picked up on the way. I walked through the door and found the table already full, every seat taken. My plate was on the counter with plastic wrap like an afterthought. No one had saved me a chair. I ate standing up in the kitchen while Camille clinked glasses, and Mom said how thankful she was for a family that always pulled together. Even now, the memory made my throat tighten. I had wanted so badly to belong that I swallowed every sting, convinced myself it was nothing. I sent Christmas cards with handwritten notes, wrapped gifts carefully, and mailed them across the country, waited for calls that never came. My presence was something they tolerated, never celebrated. I rose from bed, padded barefoot across the hardwood floor, and poured coffee into a mug. The steam rose, but it did not warm me. I set it down and leaned against the counter, closing my eyes. James found me there when he came back mid-morning. He loosened his tie, studying me carefully. "You are quiet," he said. I gave a short laugh. "That is not new." He walked over, brushed his hand along my arm. "Quiet is one thing, Emily. Being silenced is another." I stared at him. The words hit deeper than I expected. Silenced. That was exactly how it had felt. Not like I had chosen solitude, but like they had carved me out of the picture and told the world I had never been there. The coffee had gone cold. I dumped it in the sink and rinsed the mug. There were other small betrayals that added up. I remembered Mom posting a family beach photo years ago, the one I had taken. She cropped me out without even noticing. Friends from college sent me messages asking if I was still part of the family. I laughed it off, but inside it hollowed me. One Thanksgiving, Camille called from the craft store, asking me whether teal or coral napkins worked best for the table setting. I told her I was not coming that year. She chirped that it was fine, that they would save me a plate. But no one did. I pressed my hands to the counter, feeling the cool stone under my palms. My chest felt tight, my ribs straining against something that had been caged for too long. James touched my shoulder. "What do you want to do?" I did not answer right away. The truth was, I wanted to disappear from their orbit completely. But another part of me wanted them to see, even if only once, what they had done. I thought of Dad again, how he used to say I was the one who kept things lasting. That line had stayed with me long after he was gone. "Camille made things loud," he had said once with a weary smile. "You make them last." I picked up my phone and scrolled through old messages. None from Mom in the past year, except for a short happy birthday with no call. Camille had texted me only to ask if I could send money to help cover braces for her oldest. I had sent it. She had not even said thank you. The kettle whistled softly on the stove, though I had not turned it on. For a second I thought I imagined it, but then realized James had set it for tea, his way of filling silence with small comforts. He poured water into a mug and slid it toward me. I wrapped my hands around it, grateful for the heat. My reflection in the window looked pale, my eyes tired. For a moment I wondered if maybe I had truly become what they said I was: distant, too busy, too cold. Then I remembered sitting in that hospital room, Dad's hand gripping mine, his lips forming my name. I had been there. I had always been there. The apartment grew quiet again. Outside traffic hummed along Wilshire Boulevard, life moving on as if nothing had shifted. But inside me, something had. James spoke gently, almost like he was talking to himself. Sometimes the only way to answer silence is with something louder. I turned to him, my heart pounding, though I did not yet know what louder would look like. I only knew I was done letting them erase me. The tea steamed between us, and for the first time in years, the thought of Thanksgiving did not make me shrink. It made me restless. James had a way of making everything feel steady, even when the ground under me was shifting. That evening, as we sat in the living room with the city lights glittering through the tall windows, he poured 2 glasses of wine and handed one to me. His expression was calm, but I knew him well enough to see the tension behind his eyes. "I am not going to pretend I understand what it feels like," he said softly. "But I do know that you deserve better than what they give you." I took a sip, the wine sharp against my tongue, and set the glass down. "You know what the worst part is? They make me feel like I imagined it. Like I am the problem, like I am too sensitive or too distant." James leaned back, his shoulders relaxing into the couch. "That is how people keep control, Emily, by making you question your own reality." I studied him for a long moment, the faint reflection of his face in the glass window behind him. James Whitfield was not just steady, he was built on it. He had grown up with nothing in a small town in Ohio, worked 2 jobs through college, then poured everything into the company that would later become Next Wave Systems. By the time he turned 34, he had taken it public. The headlines called him a billionaire, but he rarely talked about money. To him, success was about freedom, about never being beholden to anyone who did not see his worth. Sometimes I wondered if that was why he understood me so well. He picked up his phone, scrolled briefly, then looked back at me. "Your mother called me last spring." I blinked. "She called you?" "Yes." He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "She asked if I could help Camille with her credit card debt. Said it would take the pressure off her boys." The heat rushed to my face. "She went to you instead of me." James's jaw tightened. I told her no, politely but firmly. I said our relationship was between you and me, not a bank she could tap. I pressed my hands together, my pulse thudding in my ears. "So they can cut me out of Thanksgiving, erase me from photos, and still think it is fine to ask for money." He reached for my hand, his thumb brushing the ridge of my knuckle. "That is what I mean. They want what you give but will not acknowledge you." I thought back to all the transfers I had made over the years, the late-night calls when Camille insisted the braces bill was too much, when Mom said the mortgage was behind. I had sent money without hesitation, believing it kept me tethered to them. Now it felt like I had been paying dues to a family that never planned to let me in. I stood and walked to the bookshelf, running my fingers along the spines until they landed on the framed photo tucked between two novels. It was from college graduation, Dad's arm around my shoulder, Mom and Camille on the other side. At first glance, it looked like a family beaming with pride. But I remembered the truth. Camille had nearly missed the ceremony, too busy with a wedding shower for a friend. Mom had smiled for the camera, but whispered after that she hoped I would not take a job too far away. The edges of the frame pressed into my hand, and I set it back down. James's voice broke the silence. "You know I would stand with you no matter what." I turned toward him, my throat tightening. "I know." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Emily, we do not need them. You do not need them. But if you want to face them, if you want to make them see what they have done, I will be there." His certainty steadied me even as the ache inside me deepened. The idea of walking away was tempting, but another part of me burned for something more. Not revenge for revenge's sake, but a reckoning. The clock on the wall ticked louder in the quiet room. Outside, the city kept moving, cars flowing along Wilshire lights, blinking on in high rises. Inside, I let myself breathe out slowly. I sat back down beside him, close enough that our shoulders touched. "You really think they would listen?" He gave a short laugh without humor. "Listening is not the point. Seeing is." The words lingered between us. Seeing. For years they had chosen not to see me even when I was right in front of them. I closed my eyes for a moment and pictured Camille's smile wide and polished Mom's approving nod beside her. They had always looked like the perfect picture together. Maybe it was time to show the cracks. James reached for the remote and lowered the lights, the room dimming until the glow from the city was all that lit his profile. He looked at me then, steady and unflinching. "Tell me what you need, Emily." The question hung there, heavy and full. I did not answer, not yet. Because before I could decide what I needed, I had to face the truth of everything they had taken and every time I had let them. The glass of wine sat untouched on the table, deep red against the crystal. I stared at it, my reflection warped in its curve, and felt something inside me shift. The silence I had carried for years was no longer enough. The next weekend, I sat at the dining table with my laptop open and a stack of folders I had avoided touching for too long. James was out on a call with investors, the apartment quiet, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional sound of traffic below. I scrolled through my online banking records, page after page of transfers highlighted in pale gray. 10,000 here for braces, 15,000 there for a mortgage payment, another 2,000 for what Mom had called a temporary emergency. By the time I totaled everything, the number glared back at me like an accusation. $250,000. 10 years of helping, of wiring money late at night, of believing that my sacrifices would prove I belonged. I sat back in my chair, the leather creaking my chest tight, with something that felt like betrayal but also shame. I had let them use me, and they had not even thanked me. The door opened behind me, and Savannah stepped in, brushing wind from her hair. She had been my neighbor when we were kids in North Carolina, and now she worked as a paralegal in New York. She still carried that quick energy, always moving faster than the room around her. James had called her earlier in the week, knowing I needed someone who understood both family and law. "You look like you have seen a ghost," she said, dropping her bag on the couch. I turned the laptop toward her. I think I finally added it up. Her eyes skimmed the screen, then widened. "That is not just family help, Emily. That is financial abuse." The word stung, but I knew she was right. She pulled out a flash drive from her pocket and slid it into my laptop. "I thought you might want to see this." I frowned. "What is it?" She opened a folder, rows of scanned documents filling the screen. Loan applications, all bearing my name. Some dated 3 years ago, some only 6 months back. My signature curled at the bottom of each page, neat and convincing. My stomach dropped. "That is not mine." "Of course it is not," Savannah said, her voice sharp. "It is Camille's. The handwriting matches other samples I found. She forged you to secure loans she never paid back." I pressed my hand against my mouth, bile rising. Camille had not only cut me out, she had stolen from me. She had used my name, my credit, and probably assumed I would never find out. Savannah pulled out a printed sheet and laid it between us. This one went to collections. If James had not stepped in to shield your reports, it could have ruined your financial standing. My pulse thudded in my ears. James never told me. Maybe he wanted to protect you, Savannah said gently. But you deserve to know. I sank back, the room spinning. Images of Camille laughing at family dinners, Mom praising her charm came flooding back. All the while she had been stealing from me. Savannah watched me quietly, then said, "You can press charges if you want. Forgery is serious." I shook my head slowly. "Not yet." She tilted her head. "Then what do you want?" I stared at the folder still open on the screen, at my name written in a hand that was not mine. What I wanted was not a court battle, not yet. What I wanted was for them to see, to face the truth they had buried for so long. Savannah leaned forward. "Whatever you decide, I will back you, but you cannot keep this to yourself. It will eat you alive." I closed the laptop, the sound loud in the still room. I know. Later that evening, James returned. His tie was loose, his expression tired but softening when he saw me. "Did you talk with Savannah?" I nodded, though my throat felt tight. "She found proof. Camille forged my signature." His jaw hardened, but he did not look surprised. "I knew something like this was happening. I just hoped you would not have to see it. You should have told me," I said quietly. He stepped closer, rested his hand on my shoulder. "I wanted to give you peace for as long as I could." I met his eyes, searching for the steadiness I always found there. "I do not want peace anymore, James. I want truth." He nodded once, as if he had expected that answer all along. "Then we will find it." The city lights outside flickered against the glass, and for the first time in years I felt the silence inside me breaking open into something sharper. Not rage exactly, but resolve. I opened the laptop again, the files glowing on the screen, each forged signature like a wound carved into my name. Savannah gathered her bag and said she would send more documentation by the end of the week. After she left, James and I sat in the dim room, no words passing between us, only the quiet agreement that something had shifted. The number, the signatures, the years of erasure all pressed in on me until I could hardly breathe. Yet beneath the weight, a small flame burned steady. They thought I would never see. But I had. And now there was no going back. A few nights later, Savannah called, her voice carrying that edge she always had when she was onto something. "I found something you need to hear. Meet me at my office tomorrow and bring James." The next afternoon, we drove into Midtown Manhattan, where Savannah rented a small space above a law office. The room smelled faintly of old paper and coffee, stacks of files balanced on every surface. She waved us, in her eyes bright with urgency. "I dug deeper after what we uncovered last week," she said, sliding a manila folder across the desk. Inside were notarized documents, letters, and one envelope sealed in blue wax. "Your grandmother's will." My hands trembled as I picked it up. Grandma Eleanor had passed in 2018, and I had been told her estate was modest, divided evenly. But here was a legal document dated 2015, her signature firm, witnessed by 2 neighbors. The words blurred for a moment before coming into focus. "I leave all properties, financial accounts, and assets in entirety to my granddaughter, Emily Carter. She is the only one who has shown true care and integrity." I gasped softly, covering my mouth. James leaned closer, his arms steady against my back. Savannah pressed play on a small recorder. A voice crackled to life, soft but strong. It was Grandma. "If anything happens to me, I want this to be known. Emily is the one who sat with me, listened, helped me with groceries when no one else bothered. She is the one who will honor memory, not just appearances." Tears stung my eyes. I had not heard her voice in years, and hearing it now felt like a hand reaching out from the past. "They hid this from me," I whispered. Savannah nodded grimly. "Margaret and Camille never filed it. They used an older version that split things evenly. That alone is concealment, maybe even fraud. James squeezed my shoulder. Your grandmother saw you, Emily. She knew. I pressed the back of my hand to my lips, holding in a sob. Memories flooded back of summer afternoons at her kitchen table, her wrinkled hand guiding mine as I learned to knead dough, her voice telling me I was stronger than I thought. She had trusted me. She had believed in me enough to entrust everything. Savannah pulled out another sheet. I traced the timeline. Right after Eleanor passed, Camille filed for control of the accounts. She claimed the newer will was invalid. No judge ever saw this version. I shook my head slowly, my chest aching. They erased not just me, but her wishes too. James looked at Savannah. What would happen if this went public? She folded her hands. It would cause chaos, lawsuits. The family name would be dragged into court, but it would also restore Emily's rightful inheritance. I closed the folder and pressed it against my chest. I was not even thinking about the money. What mattered was that my grandmother had chosen me. She had known I was the one they tried hardest to erase. Savannah watched me closely. You do not have to decide today, but you need to understand the weight of what you are holding. We left the office as dusk fell, the streets buzzing with early holiday crowds. I clutched the folder to me as if someone might try to snatch it away. James hailed a cab and slid in beside me, his hand resting over mine. In the dim light, he said softly, "She loved you enough to make sure her words would outlast their silence." I turned my face toward the window, watching the blur of neon and taillights. My reflection stared back at me, pale and damp-eyed but steadier than I had felt in years. When we got home, I set the folder on the kitchen table and opened the envelope again. The wax cracked softly. Inside was a letter in Grandma's handwriting. My dearest Emily, you may not see it now, but you are the one who keeps our family spirit alive. Others will fight for control, but you must remember the truth is yours to hold. I folded the letter carefully and slid it back, my hands trembling. James poured tea, placed the mug before me. Do you want to go after them? Legally, I stared at the folder. Not yet. First, I want them to see it. He nodded once, as if that had been his thought all along. Then we will make sure they do. The apartment filled with quiet. Outside, the city hummed, indifferent to my family's secrets. Inside, I sat with the folder, my grandmother's voice still echoing in my ears. For the first time in a long time, I felt less alone. The Sunday before Thanksgiving, I woke to the buzz of my phone. A string of messages lit up the screen, all from the Carter family group chat I had been removed from years ago. Savannah still had a way of slipping me screenshots, a quiet lifeline I had never asked for but always clung to. The first photo showed Camille standing in Mom's dining room, arms outstretched as if she owned the place. Candles lined the table, matching linens, perfectly folded pumpkins, spray-painted gold. Her caption read, "Thanksgiving will be flawless this year," Mom chimed in beneath. "It always is when you are at the helm, sweetheart." Hearts and clapping hands followed from cousins, aunts, uncles. My chest tightened. Their words painted a picture of a family bound together by warmth. But I knew better. It was a stage play, and Camille was the star. Another screenshot landed, this time of Lily, adding her little twist. "Can't wait. At least we won't have to deal with Emily showing up to make it awkward." I gripped the phone harder, the letters blurring. The cruelty was casual, as if I were an inconvenience they had been spared. James walked into the kitchen, still in sweats, hair messy from sleep. He poured coffee and glanced at me. "You look like you want to throw that phone against the wall." I set it down, the screen face down on the counter. They are planning their perfect holiday. And apparently celebrating that I am not there. He slid a mug toward me, his expression unreadable. That is what they do. They rewrite the story to suit themselves. I wrapped my hands around the mug, the heat seeping into my palms. For years I had tried to fight the rewriting by being useful, by sending money, by showing up. But all it had done was give them more reasons to erase me. Later that afternoon, I stepped outside for air. The chill of November bit my cheeks, the city alive with honking horns and bundled crowds. I wandered down the block to the bookstore where Grandma used to take me when she visited. I ran my fingers across the spines of cookbooks, remembering her humming as she turned the pages, already planning which pie we would bake. The memory anchored me as I let the anger settle into something calmer, sharper. When I returned, James had set his laptop on the dining table. He had pulled up social media, scrolling through posts from my relatives. "Look at this," he said, turning the screen. Mom was tagged in a photo with her friends at a brunch. The caption read, "Margaret is so selfless, always giving, always putting family first." I let out a bitter laugh. Selfless. That was her favorite mask. James leaned back. "They have built a narrative where you are the problem, and everyone applauds it." "The truth is louder," I said quietly. That evening I called Savannah. Her voice came through steady. "I just saw the screenshots." "Are you okay?" I took a breath. "I am tired of being written out of the story." "Then, let's write it back in," she replied. We talked for nearly an hour, planning without naming it planning. She promised to keep tracking the chat to gather more proof of what they said behind closed doors. Before hanging up, she added, "The more they show who they really are, the easier it will be for you to show the world." I ended the call and stood at the window watching the lights blink across Los Angeles. Down below, a couple walked hand in hand, laughing into the night. I wondered if they knew what it was like to be erased by the very people meant to hold you closest. James came up behind me, slipping his arms around my waist. He rested his chin on my shoulder. "What did she say? That they are writing their own version of me, and we are going to let them?" He frowned. "Let them?" I turned slightly enough to see his reflection in the glass. "Because when the time comes, we will hold up the real version." The words felt heavy, but they gave me a strange peace. For the first time, I was not scrambling to fix or prove. I was waiting, letting their own actions build the case against them. The following morning, another notification buzzed. Camille had posted a boomerang of herself hanging garlands in Mom's living room, her caption filled with gratitude and light. The comments rolled in. People admired her spirit, her commitment, her ability to hold the family together. And there, tucked among the hearts and praises, was Mom's reply. "You are the glue that keeps us whole." I stared at those words until my vision blurred, then I put the phone down. I walked into the bedroom where James was getting ready for a meeting. He looked up at me, tie half nodded. "They called her the glue," I said. He raised an eyebrow. "Funny. Glue usually holds everything together by covering up the cracks." The remark made me laugh despite myself, the sound sharp and unexpected. For a moment it eased the heaviness in my chest. When he left for his meeting, I sat alone in the quiet apartment. The folder with Grandma's will still rested on the table, the letter folded neatly inside. I opened it again, tracing the curves of her handwriting. "You must remember the truth is yours to hold." The truth was in my hands now, but timing mattered. Thanksgiving was only days away, and I could feel the weight of it pressing closer with each hour. The phone buzzed again, another screenshot from Savannah. This one showed Camille bragging about the playlist she had made for dinner, insisting it would be the best Thanksgiving yet. The comments agreed, calling her generous, radiant, unforgettable. I closed my eyes and pictured the scene. A long table dressed in gold candles, flickering, Camille at the head, Mom at her side, the family leaning in close as if nothing had ever been broken. Their laughter would rise, but underneath it, there would be a silence shaped like me. I folded the letter back into the envelope and slid it under the folder. The silence had lasted long enough. 2 nights later, we sat around Savannah's desk with files spread out like pieces of a puzzle. The city outside her office windows was alive with the kind of November wind that whipped down the avenues, rattling the glass. James leaned against the edge of the desk, his sleeves rolled, his focus steady. Savannah tapped her pen against the folder, her eyes sharp. "We have everything we need," she said. "Transfers, forged documents, your grandmother's will. But if you want them to actually face it, you need more than paper. You need impact." I rubbed my temples, the weight of it all pressing heavy. I do not want to drag this into a courtroom yet. I want them to see it with their own eyes in front of each other. James straightened his gaze, meeting mine. Then we show them. Savannah looked between us. What do you mean? James pulled his laptop closer, typing quickly. We can arrange for the evidence to play during dinner. The house is wired for Wi-Fi, and with the right setup, we can trigger a presentation remotely. My heart thudded. You mean during Thanksgiving? Exactly. He glanced up at me. They want a flawless holiday. Let them choke on the truth instead. For a moment the thought stole my breath. I pictured them sitting at that long table, candles lit, food steaming, laughter bubbling, and then the screen flickering on, their secrets rolling out one by one. Savannah leaned back in her chair. It is risky. If it fails, they will bury you even deeper. James shook his head. Not if I handle it. We spent hours sketching it out. Savannah compiled the files, labeling each clip and screenshot. First, the bank transfers showing every dollar I had sent. Then the loan documents with Camille's forged signature. Finally, the video and letter from Grandma Eleanor, her voice clear and certain. I sat quietly while they worked, my hands gripping the armrests of the chair. Every so often, James would glance at me, as if checking to make sure I had not changed my mind. I had not. At midnight, Savannah stood and stretched. I will clean everything up and send it to you tonight. Just promise me you are ready. I nodded slowly. Ready was not the word, but waiting any longer felt impossible. Back at our apartment, James set the equipment on the dining table. A compact router, a small device disguised as a speaker, wires coiled neatly. He looked like a man preparing for battle. What if they just laugh it off? I asked quietly. What if they twist it like they always do? James clipped a wire into place and met my eyes. Then let them. But this time it will not be your word against theirs. It will be their own voices, their own handwriting, their own lies. I wrapped my arms around myself, pacing the room. The thought of Mom's face when she heard Grandma's voice again made my chest ache. The thought of Camille, cornered by her own forgeries, made my hands tremble. James stepped behind me, resting his hands on my shoulders. You are not doing this alone. I am right here. The hum of the city outside filled the silence that followed. I turned, pressed my forehead against his chest, and let myself breathe. The next day, Savannah called with one last update. I traced the chat logs, she said. Camille and your mother think you are completely out of the picture. They are not worried about you at all. Good, James replied on speaker. Then they will never see it coming. That night we ran a trial. James set his laptop on the counter, Savannah joined by video call, and I sat at the table with my hands folded. At his signal, the device connected. The screen lit up black for a moment, then the first slide appeared. Bank transfers, lines of numbers scrolling down. My name, their names, the dates. Next came the forged loans, Camille's handwriting unmistakable. Then the video of Grandma, her voice filling the room, calm and unwavering. I could not move. Tears slid down my cheeks silently. James closed the laptop gently. It works. Savannah's voice crackled through the call. Then it is set. I wiped my face and nodded. Thanksgiving was 3 days away. Later that evening, while James packed a small bag for our trip, I stood by the window staring at the blur of taillights on Wilshire. The thought of exposing them in front of everyone made my stomach twist, but beneath the nerves there was something steadier, a certainty that the silence would not last much longer. James zipped his bag and looked over. Tomorrow we fly to New York, then onto the island. While they sit down to dinner, we will already be gone. I turned from the window, my heart pounding at the shape of what was coming. For the first time in years, I felt like the one holding the script. The flight to New York was quiet, the kind of quiet where words felt too heavy to speak. James sat beside me, reading over a document on his tablet, but I could feel his attention split, his eyes lifting to me every so often, as if to check I had not drifted away. The hum of the plane filled the silence, steady and low. When we landed, the air was sharper, colder. The city smelled like roasted chestnuts, and exhaust, the kind of mix that always came with November. We checked into a hotel near Central Park and ordered room service, but I barely touched my food. My stomach twisted with the weight of what was coming. James pushed his plate aside and leaned across the table. "You are carrying this like a stone." I tried to smile, but it did not reach my eyes. What if it is too much? What if I become exactly what they always said? I was vindictive, difficult. He shook his head slowly. "Emily, telling the truth is not cruelty. Letting lies stand is." I looked down at my untouched plate. Somewhere deep inside, I knew he was right. Still, the thought of my mother's face when she heard Grandma's words again pulled at me, made me doubt if I could go through with it. Later, as I lay in bed staring at the city lights flickering against the curtains, my phone buzzed. A message from Lily. "Hope you are enjoying Thanksgiving alone again. Better for everyone that way." My breath caught. The cruelty of it, so casual, almost playful. My hand tightened around the phone. For years I had let these barbs sink in without answer. Tonight something inside me shifted. I typed slowly each word, deliberate. "I will never be alone again." I hit send and set the phone down, my chest rising with a strange steadiness. James stirred beside me, half awake. "Everything all right?" I whispered. "Yes. For once I think it is." The next morning we walked through the park. The trees were nearly bare, leaves scattered across the paths like brittle reminders of time passing. James bought us coffee from a cart, the steam curling into the cold air. We sat on a bench watching joggers and bundled couples pass by. "Do you ever think about what happens after?" I asked. "After they know?" He sipped his coffee, considering. "They will rage, they will deny, maybe even try to smear you. But eventually the noise dies down, and what is left will be the truth." His certainty calmed me more than the coffee warming my hands. That afternoon, Savannah called. She had checked the connections again, tested the timing. Everything was ready. She sounded almost too calm, like a surgeon about to make the first cut. I thanked her, my voice steady though my hands trembled. She paused before hanging up. "Emily, remember this. You are not attacking them. You are reclaiming yourself." After the call, I walked to the window. The city stretched wide, cold wind pushing at the glass. Down on the street, a woman tugged her grandson's hand, pointing toward the holiday display in a store window. His laughter drifted faintly even up here. For a moment I ached for something simple, something like that. But life had never given me simple, only choices. And this one had already been made. That evening, James laid out our passports and the tickets for the flight to the island. The envelope sat on the dresser, crisp and white. Seeing them there made it real. "Are you scared?" I asked quietly. He looked up, his eyes steady on mine. "Only if you are." I shook my head. "Not scared. Just waiting." The hotel room filled with silence again. Not the heavy kind this time, but a pause before something inevitable. I set the passports back in their place and drew the curtains closed. Tomorrow everything would shift and there was no undoing it. Thanksgiving Day dawned gray in New York, the kind of morning where the clouds hang low and the air smells faintly of snow even when none falls. James and I checked out of the hotel with only 2 bags, his hand steady at the small of my back. As the car pulled away toward the airport, my phone buzzed once more. Savannah's message lit the screen. "It is time." Somewhere, hundreds of miles south, my family was gathering around the table, Camille fussing with candles, Mom adjusting the china. I pictured the room I knew so well, the walls washed in soft yellow, the sideboard lined with framed photographs. It had been years since I last stepped inside, but I could still feel the grooves in the dining chairs under my hands. James sat beside me, phone balanced in his palm. At exactly 3 o'clock, he tapped the screen. The program launched, seamless, silent. We watched the small device icon blink, green confirmation that the connection held. I closed my eyes, imagining the moment the screen flickered to life above their perfect table. It would have started small, a static hum, the lights dimming slightly. Then the television on the far wall powering on. At first, maybe they thought it was an accident, one of the kids grabbing a remote. But then, the first slide appeared. Bank transfers, neat lines of black text scrolling down the screen. My name, their names, the dates, the amounts. 10,000 for braces, 15 for a mortgage, another 5 for bills. The room would have gone quiet. Forks paused midair, the clatter of cutlery silence. Camille's voice likely broke the hush, first sharp and dismissive. Some mistake. A glitch. But then came the second file. Loan documents filled the screen, my name printed at the top, my signature below. But I had never signed them. The handwriting was hers. The loops of the letters, the way she crossed her T's, identical to the note she used to leave on the refrigerator. I imagined Mom's voice rising brittle and tight. Camille, what is this? And Camille scrambling, her face flushing, her charm slipping. She might have stammered, accused me of forging the proof myself, twisting the truth to make her look guilty. But the room would not have believed her so easily this time. The third file played then. A video, grainy but clear. Grandma Eleanor sitting on her porch, wrapped in a shawl, her eyes tired but steady. Her voice carried through the speakers, soft yet resolute. I want Emily to have everything. She is the one who came when no one else did. She is the one who makes things last. The silence after those words must have been suffocating. Mom clutching her glass too tightly. Camille's sons glancing nervously around, too young to understand the weight but old enough to feel the tension. James tapped another key on his phone, and the final piece rolled, the letter scanned in full, Grandma's handwriting unmistakable. My dearest Emily, the truth is yours to hold. I pictured the faces, then pale, under the candlelight, every lie they had built, unraveling thread by thread. Back in the car, I opened my eyes, heart hammering, though I was miles away. James set the phone down and reached for my hand. It is done. For a moment I could not speak. I imagined the room again, the screen gone dark now, the silence stretched long. Someone might have tried to laugh it off, but no one could erase what they had just seen. As the car sped toward the airport, I turned my face toward the window. The city blurred by gray and gold people, bustling, unaware of the storm that had just broken hundreds of miles south. When we reached the terminal, James squeezed my hand once more. They know now, Emily, and nothing will ever be the same. I carried the weight of that truth with me as we walked through security, the noise of the airport swelling around us. My phone buzzed again, a string of missed calls lighting the screen, names I knew by heart. I silenced it, slipped it back into my bag, and kept walking. The phone calls kept stacking up until the screen looked like it was glowing red. I saw Mom's name appear, then vanish, then Camille's, then Lily's, each one leaving a voicemail I did not open. Somewhere back in Charlotte, the dinner table must have been unraveling. I could picture it too clearly, the perfect centerpiece knocked askew, candles burning low while their voices rose. Savannah texted me instead of calling. It is chaos. Camille is screaming at your mom. Lily is crying. Half the family has walked out. I showed James the message. He only gave a single nod as if he had expected nothing less. On the plane headed south, I let my eyes close and pictured them, the family who had told the world for years that I was distant, cold, the difficult one. Now their voices must have tangled over each other, each trying to rewrite the truth again, but failing because the evidence was right there on the screen. When we landed for our connection, I stepped aside into a quiet corner of the terminal and finally pressed play on one of the voicemails. Mom's voice spilled through, brittle and trembling. Emily, what have you done? You embarrassed us in front of everyone. We could have handled this privately. I ended the message before it finished, my chest tightening, but not in guilt. For once I felt only clarity. James joined me, coffee cups in hand. They are scrambling, he said, passing one to me. That means it worked. I took a long sip, the bitter heat steadying me. Camille's number lit my phone again. I pressed decline. Another text buzzed through, this time from Savannah. She added a detail. Your Uncle Robert stood up and said out loud, maybe Emily was right all along. For a moment I froze, staring at the words. Out of everyone, he had been the least likely to speak up. The quiet fisherman, always shrugging away from drama. Yet he had said it. My throat tightened. We boarded the second flight and settled into our seats. As the plane lifted off, my phone vibrated once more with a long message from Camille. I braced myself and opened it. "You are cruel, Emily. You ruined Thanksgiving for everyone. You have always been jealous of me. Grandma trusted me, not you. Everyone knows you twisted this." I read it twice, then passed the phone to James. His eyes skimmed the lines before he set it face down on the tray table. She is panicking. That is what people do when their mask slips. I stared out the window at the fading horizon. The clouds below glowed with the last of the sun's soft orange bleeding into gray. For years I had wished Camille would simply see me, would treat me like a sister. Now all I saw was her fear. Somewhere over the ocean, while the plane hummed steady, I thought about the years of silence, the empty chairs, the cropped photos. None of that had broken me. What had nearly undone me was the gaslighting, the insistence that I was the one who had left, that I had abandoned them. Tonight that narrative had cracked wide open. When we landed, I powered my phone back on. Dozens more notifications waited, but one stood out. A voicemail from Margaret, again shorter this time. Her voice sounded small, the words faint. "Emily, I never wanted it like this. I did not play it again." I simply slipped the phone into my bag and followed James through the terminal. His hand brushed mine, grounding me in the swirl of strangers rushing by. Outside, the night air was warm, heavy with salt from the sea nearby. A driver held a sign with James's name. We climbed into the back seat, the dark water stretching out beyond the highway. James leaned back, eyes half closed. "Tomorrow we leave all of it behind," he said. I looked out at the ocean, my reflection faint in the glass, and felt a weight lift. The storm behind us was still raging, but I was no longer inside it. The tide was shifting, carrying me somewhere they could not reach. The morning light spilled across the tarmac as we boarded the small jet waiting for us. The hum of its engines carried a different kind of anticipation. Not the dread of another family holiday, but the promise of something untouched. James rested his hand against the small of my back as we climbed the steps, his presence steady, grounding. Inside, the cabin was quiet, the leather seats soft, the air cool with the faint scent of citrus. As we lifted off, the coastline of Florida faded beneath us, the waves glinting in the distance. I pressed my forehead lightly to the glass, watching the horizon stretch wide and endless. For years, my world had felt small, bound by family obligations and silences I could never break. Now the sky itself seemed to open. James poured us 2 glasses of water and set one beside me. He watched me for a moment, then said, "I bought the island last year." I turned, startled. "You bought it?" He nodded, his mouth curving into a small smile. "I wanted a place no one could touch us. I kept it quiet until the right time." The words sank in slowly. He had thought ahead long before the cracks of my family became this earthquake. It was not an escape planned overnight. It was trust, belief that I would one day need a sanctuary of my own. My throat tightened as I whispered. "You knew. I knew you deserved better," he said simply. The rest of the flight passed in silence, the kind that felt gentle rather than heavy. I drifted in and out of thought, images of Charlotte's dining room flashing against the vast calm of the sea below. When we landed, the air wrapped around me like warm silk, carrying the scent of salt and hibiscus. The island lay ahead, turquoise water kissing its shore, palms swaying as if welcoming us. A small dock stretched into the bay where a boat waited to carry us across the last stretch. As we approached, the villa, white stone walls gleamed in the sunday, the windows open to the ocean, the rooms airy and filled with light. I stepped inside, the echo of my footsteps soft against the polished floors, and felt something shift deep inside me. This was not borrowed space, not a chair begrudgingly saved, not a corner of someone else's table. It was mine to belong in. James carried our bags to the master suite, then returned holding a small velvet box. He paused in the doorway, the surf whispering behind him, his eyes steady on mine. "I know I asked once before," he said quietly, "but I want to ask again. not as a promise for someday, as a promise for now. He opened the box, and inside lay a ring that caught the sunlight, scattering it across the walls like water. My breath caught. For a moment I could not speak. I thought of Grandma's letter, of her words that I kept the truth alive. I thought of my father, his hand gripping mine, when he whispered my name after the stroke. I thought of every year I had stood outside looking and waiting for permission to belong. And here was someone offering me belonging freely without condition. Yes, I whispered the word, barely sound but steady. He slipped the ring onto my finger, his hands warm against mine. We stood there for a long moment, the waves carrying the sound of our silence. Later, as the sun dipped low, we walked along the beach. The sand was cool under my bare feet, the water curling in delicate foam around my ankles. James held my hand, his thumb brushing lightly against the new band of gold. The island felt alive, each breeze carrying the scent of salt and flowers, each wave, a reminder that I had crossed into a place that was wholly my own. We returned to the villa and opened the balcony doors wide. The night air swept in warm and gentle, carrying the hum of cicadas. I placed the small pearl necklace Grandma had left me on the dresser, setting it where the moonlight caught its sheen. "This is where she belongs too," I said softly. James looked at me with quiet understanding. She would be proud. The room filled with stillness, but not the kind that haunted me for years. This silence was clean, waiting, full of possibility. I turned off the lamp, the sound of the ocean folding around us, and let the darkness settle steady as breath. The morning sun spilled across the balcony, painting the water in streaks of gold and silver. I woke with the sound of waves pressing gently against the shore, steady and calm like a heartbeat. For the first time in years, I did not wake with a knot in my chest. The phone on the nightstand buzzed with more missed calls, but I did not reach for it. I let it sit there silent and unanswered, while I wrapped myself in the quiet of the island. James was already in the kitchen, barefoot, humming under his breath as he sliced fruit. He looked up when I walked in, his smile easy. "You slept," he said, like it was a small victory. I poured myself coffee, breathing in its warmth, and joined him at the table. The ring on my finger caught the light, still new and strange, yet it felt like it had always belonged there. Later, I wandered outside with my mug and walked along the sand. The wind carried the scent of salt and hibiscus, the air wrapping around me like a soft shawl. I thought about Charlotte, about the dining room that must have felt smaller after the truth spilled into it. I thought about Camille's voice breaking Mom's silence, the way the family had shifted in an instant. But I did not ache for their approval anymore. That need had slipped away. I knelt in the sand and pulled the small pearl necklace from my pocket, the one Grandma had left me. I pressed it into the earth just enough for the sun to catch its sheen, then let it rest against my palm. She had always believed I would carry her truth, and now I had. James joined me, slipping his hand into mine. "You look lighter," he said quietly. "I am," I answered. We spent the day walking the shoreline, swimming in the clear water, sharing a meal on the veranda as the sun dipped low. It felt like a different life, but it was mine. That night, as the waves curled against the shore and the stars sharpened in the sky, I sat on the porch and let the memories come. All the years of being left out, of cropped photos, of saved plates that never appeared. For so long, those wounds had defined me. Now they were only shadows fading behind the brightness of what I had chosen instead. My phone buzzed again. This time I picked it up, not to answer but to listen. Margaret's voice filled the voicemail, tired, almost fragile. "Emily, I do not know how to fix this. I never thought it would end this way." I closed my eyes. She had made her choice. They all had. I deleted the message, set the phone face down, and leaned back in my chair. The ocean hummed steady, and for once I felt steady too. James stepped out with 2 glasses of wine, handed me one, and settled into the chair beside mine. We clinked them together gently. "Two beginnings," he said. "Two endings," I added. And both felt true. The island wind moved through the palms, the chimes of the veranda tinkling softly. I thought of Grandma's words, "The truth is yours to hold," and realized I had finally done it. For years I thought revenge meant fire, meant destruction, But sitting there, the ocean stretching wide and endless, I understood it was simpler. Revenge was truth spoken aloud. Revenge was choosing peace for myself when they tried to deny it. I lifted my glass, the stars reflected in its surface, and let the silence settle around us. If you have ever been left out of the table where you thought you belonged, if you have ever carried the weight of silence pressed against your name, know this: you are not alone. Share your story in the comments or even just a word so that none of us have to carry that silence by ourselves. And if this story touched something in you, stay with me here. There are more truths to tell and more silences waiting to be broken.